Welcome to Lunch and Look at the Stark Museum of Art. Our topic today is Orange's best-selling author, Janette Sebring Lowrey. On the left is a photograph of author Janette Sebring Lowrey, and on the right is her best-selling book, The Poky Little Puppy. Although The Poky Little Puppy has sold nearly 15 million copies, few people know the name of the author of that book, Janette Sebring Lowrey, and fewer still probably know that she was born right here in Orange, Texas, where the Stark Museum of Art is. So today I want to introduce you to Janette Sebring Lowrey as an author, look at her connections with Orange, Texas, and then view a few of the books that she has written and explore as well the illustrators who brought to life, in visual terms, the stories that Janette Sebring Lowrey wrote. Notice in her picture, she is in her kitchen stirring a bowl. She's very much presented as a woman of the house. And certainly in her lifetime, she devoted herself to her family, and writing was always important to her life, but really as a published author, it came later in her life as her son grew and became more independent. So she did devote herself to family life and resumed her career when she had additional time. As I mentioned, Janette Sebring Lowrey was born in Orange, Texas. On the left is a delayed birth certificate because when she was born, March 2nd, 1892, Orange County did not have birth records. So later in life, she had to come and get a birth certificate and she had to submit proof of her birth she used a family Bible and a couple of other documents. But local historian Margaret Toll discovered this document, providing proof that Janette Sebring Lowrey was born as Janette Sebring in Orange, Texas. On the right is a page from another book that she wrote entitled Rings on Her Fingers. And this fictional story is based on the town of Orange, Texas, although it's never named, but it clearly is described in the book as a small town on the Sabine River in the southeast corner of Texas, which is what Orange is. This is a fictionalized account, we believe, of her childhood, and I'll use a few illustrations from this book to illustrate Janette's life. As the birth certificate shows, her father was Rudolph R. Sebring, who was born in Ohio in 1927. He was a teacher and school superintendent in Orange, Texas. Janette later described him as an inflexible disciplinarian and very hard on his 5 daughters. But yet she said he loved us dearly, and they had to grow up and have children of their own before they could realize just what his feelings were for them. She contrasted this with her mother, Janette Scurry Sebring. She named her daughter after herself, who came from cavalier people, as Janette Lowrey described them, who were gay and sweet and less difficult in every way. The family would come to have 5 daughters. We're not entirely sure where their first residence was in Orange. They did, if you just go by what is described in the book, the house where the fictional family of young girls whose attributes and whose narrative seems to relate to Janette's, the house where they lived was described as being on Green Avenue, and Green Avenue was used in Orange, Texas, and it was between 5th and 6th Streets, which means that it would have been on a lot facing the W.H. Stark house, where William Henry Stark and Miriam Lutcher Stark and Lutcher Stark lived and came to contribute so much to Orange, Texas. Certainly the Sebring family knew of the Stark family. Lutcher would have been about 5 years older than Janette Sebring Lowrey. She was born in 1892. And so at a young age, you might have been a bit older for her to be a comrade, but then in the small town, they would definitely have likely known each other. On the right is a deed showing that Rudolph Sebring bought property, 2 lots in Orange that were about 6 blocks away from Green Avenue. The site is now the intersection of Cherry Avenue and 6th Street. A local historian, Jerry Pennington, found this deed recorded in the county courthouse for me. It's likely that the family did move further north from Green Avenue into a new residence around, the deed was signed 1899. He paid $325 for the property. The Sebring family appeared in the 1900 census. The census, unfortunately, doesn't have a street name, just precinct 1. But Rudolph Sebring and Mary and Janette Sebring and the 3 daughters are listed, as well as Mary Scurry, who is Janette Scurry Sebring's sister, as was sometimes common in families. An unmarried sister would live with her married sister's family and become an aunt in residence who would help with the children and other household duties, and that's certainly the case with these 2 sisters. We see on the right another illustration from Rings on Her Fingers with the 3 oldest daughters of the family, and they are looking toward a carriage and a pony driven by one of their compatriots of the time, and the 3 young girls in the story would want to save their money to be able to buy a pony and a carriage just like their friend Johnny had. Janette Sebring Lowrey's family, her parents, were both well-read. She described the library that her father had in the house and the many books that the sisters enjoyed reading from there, and also later going to libraries to check out books. So we know that their father was well educated and read, and the same was true for their mother. Their mother, Janette Scurry Sebring, was a founding member in Orange of the Ladies Shakespeare Club, and you see on the left a page of minutes from the Shakespeare Club with the bylaws, and they actually met at the home of Mrs. R.R. Sebring. So she actually entertained the group of women who got together once a week to read Shakespearean plays and essentially take different parts. The club was founded in 1893, just 1 year after Janette Sebring, then to be Lowrey when she married, was born. So Mrs. Sebring had 1 small child when the club was founded, and very shortly after another daughter. So how long she remained an active member, I'm not sure. There's a couple of years not included, with minutes not in the notebook that our Bingenstein Library has. And when minutes resume, her name is not mentioned as a member, but her sister, Mary Scurry, who lived with the family, became an active member of the Ladies Shakespeare Club and became at one point a director. They all took turns as being directors of the plays, and different members would read aloud, and they had to memorize quotations from the book, and when their meetings were called to order, they would answer by quoting from whichever play they were reading. So you can see this was an important part of the cultural life of the family. So Janette grew up with the knowing literature all around her, and what a vital part of life it was. On the right is another illustration from Rings on Its Fingers, and one of the young daughters is embracing her mother, and the other young woman in the illustration is in the story, a sister named Dora in the book, who lives with the family and becomes the kind of surrogate mother to the young girls. And that certainly was the case in this family. They lived in Orange until around 1903, and then the family moved to Huntsville, most likely because Rudolph Sebring obtained another position. Unfortunately, in 1903, Janette Scurry Sebring passed away and is buried now in Huntsville. Her sister continued to live with the family and really became a second mother to the children. And Janette Sebring Lowrey wrote, or was quoted later as saying how much Mamie, as the girls called her, meant to all of them, and how much they loved her. The family had grown to 5 children. A pair of twins were born to the couple before they moved to Huntsville. In the following years, the family moved again to Brazoria County. The 1910 census shows Rudolph Sebring as head of household in Alvin, Brazoria County, Texas. Mary Scurry continues to live with the family. By that time, Janette Sebring had graduated from high school, and in 1909, she enrolled at the University of Texas, studying English as a major. She was a member of the Pierian Literary Society, according to the yearbook of the University of Texas, and you see her in this illustration. She's on the second row, second from, well, it depends on the count, how you count. Yes, second row, fourth from the left. We'll have a detail later. And this was a literary society, I think somewhat like the club that her mother and later aunt belonged to, just to enjoy literature and culture. She was also a member of the Scribblers, and you see her, according to this picture, she is in the second row, third from the left. And the Scribblers was likely a group of students, both male and female, who enjoyed writing. We know that she wrote stories for the school magazine as she studied. She remained enrolled from 1909 to 1913. Might add that she was at the University of Texas following the time that Lutcher Stark was there. He graduated in 1909, and she began in 1909, although he would have been on campus as he stayed and was manager of the football team. But whether they crossed paths, we're not sure. These are close-ups of the pictures labeled Janette Sebring in the 2 photographs of clubs that she belonged to. Unfortunately, she left University of Texas in 1913. She was in her senior year, but she left without officially graduating. She became a teacher, and between 1913 and about 1918, she taught in other schools. The only one that I can be certain of is that she taught English in the town of Carthage, Texas, and she started a glee club there, and actually was recognized by the college later, for the school rather, for founding a glee club at the school at Carthage. She left the teaching career after she left teaching actively about 1918, and began a business career in the 1920 census. She is in Houston, Harris County, living with her family, and her Aunt Mary is listed as the head of the household, and the other daughters are included. Janette Sebring is now identified as a bookkeeper for a trust company, and elsewhere it said she worked for managing advertisements for a company, possibly seeking greater financial gain than being a teacher. One of the interesting aspects of the entries in the 1920 census is that Mary Scurry is listed as the head of the household. Rudolph Sebring does not appear in the census at all, and but he was still alive. He did not pass away until 1927. So there must have been some disruption in the family, and perhaps that led to harder times financially, which might have affected decisions made by Janette Sebring at that time. But in 1922, she married Fred Vestal Lowrey, who was a lawyer, and they moved to San Antonio. And in 1925, they had one son who was named Alfred Sebring Lowrey. So his middle name was from his mother's maiden name. And he grew up to go to the University of Texas as well. And so this is his photograph from his fraternity at the University of Texas. They only had the one son, but Janette Sebring Lowrey seems to have been a devoted mother to her child, and but obviously continued to have ambitions as a writer. In the late 1930s, she was asked to write a book for a publisher around the theme of San Antonio. And it seems that she was given this task from her friendship with a local bookstore owner who was very active in the literary community in San Antonio, and had been asked to write a book or to find a writer, and he recommended Janette. So she wrote a story, Annunciata and the Shepherds, which was published by the Small Gentry Press, but first of all made connections that she would use throughout her career. And it was a beautifully designed book and a lovely story about a Christmas pageant that annually took place in San Antonio. And in her story, the young girl, Annunciata, wants to celebrate it, and she helps her neighbor overcome difficulties so that he can host the celebration. The artist who was chosen to illustrate Annunciata and did the charming illustrations was a Santa Fe artist named Willard F. Clark, who was known for his printmaking and his printing business. On the left is a calendar in the collection of the Stark Museum of Art that his Clark Studios printed, and it features some illustrations by many prominent Taos artists, the one on the cover being Isla McAfee. The next book that Janette Sebring Lowrey illustrated was also a Texas story. She was invited to do the illustrations for a book that would become The Silver Dollar. And the illustrations were done by Barbara Latham, who was an artist born in Connecticut, trained at the Pratt Art Institute. She moved out to Taos, New Mexico, and joined the colony there. In Taos, she met her future husband, Howard Cook, who was also an artist, and they married, and each of them continued their careers. They traveled a great deal to get sources of inspiration, and they spent some time at a ranch in Cotella, Texas, and at that ranch, Barbara Latham made many drawings, and she did it. And in this case, I believe that the drawings presented the idea for the story, and that the illustrations were prepared first, and then Janette Sebring Lowrey was brought in to do the story around Barbara Latham's illustrations. The story, and you see it on the book cover, a young cowboy seated on a horse with help from a cowboy, and he's holding in his hands the silver dollar of the title. The story winds around the fact that this young cowboy was very proud of his silver dollar and planned to buy an outfit to wear, but he lost his silver dollar, and so the cowboys on the ranch entertained him and encouraged his desires to be a cowboy, and they gave, each of the cowboys gave the young cowboy named Bill in the story the gear that he would need to be a cowboy, his hat, bandana, shirt, and pants. And so Latham drew beautiful illustrations of this, and this one is young Bill and his cowboy friend Snake Eye having a cookout of beans and typical cowboy fare in front of one of the homes of the workers, with all the delightful chicken around and the very elegant stylized trees. Latham seemed fascinated with the work on the ranch, and she especially delighted in all the cactus growing around. And she did a beautiful drawing that's part of the story, but not really an essential part of the narrative. But she was so fascinated by the workers burning the cacti so that the thorns would burn off and the cattle could eat them. And this is one of her interpretations of that subject. Notice she stylizes it and compresses the space, so she's still able to tell the narrative, but you can really feel the more modern aspects of Barbara Latham's style. And then the story concludes with young Bill finding that silver dollar when he goes back and visits the armadillo who lives in the sand under a prickly pear cactus. And you can see that he's already in all of his gear. So after he found this silver dollar, he told everyone that he would be sharing it by buying things for all of his friends who had bought things for him. Now, most likely, Janette Sebring Lowrey was again suggested for the job of writing the narrative by her connections with the bookstore owner in San Antonio. It's unlikely that that Barbara Latham and Janette Sebring Lowrey met, although they may have corresponded. But toward the end of the project, they were corresponding through the publisher, because Barbara Latham decided at one point, after seeing a draft of the text, that she wanted the name of the main character changed from Bill to his name of the young cowboy that she wrote the story about, to his real name, Jimmy. So Barbara wrote to the publisher asking him to change the name, and he was about to be agreeable, or he agreed to, and then informed Janette Sebring Lowrey, and she was incensed. She wrote back saying that the name of Bill fit the text of the story, and it added to the rhythm of her sentences. She was very precise in saying how it was very important to her that it be Bill, one strong syllable, not Jimmy. And so the publisher changed it back to Bill and wrote both of them and said, this is, kind of the final word on it. We're going with this. So there may have been a bit of prickliness between Barbara Latham and Janette Sebring Lowrey over this, but it turned out to be a charming book and a delightful story with some wonderful illustrations. On the right, you'll see that this is a picture from an Antiques Roadshow PBS program where a man came in with a Howard Cook, the husband of Barbara Latham's, a lithograph by him and a copy of the silver dollar. And he explained that he got these items because his father had been friends with Howard Cook, and he and his wife visited their ranch, and that he was the young cowboy who lost his silver dollar and later found it again. And he said he still has that same silver dollar, although he lost it several times since then. So the story continues to resonate. The third book that Janette Sebring Lowrey had published is Rings on Her Fingers, which is the fictionalized account of young girls growing up in Orange, Texas. They saw the pony and carriage that their friend young Johnny Parks had, and wanted to buy a pony of their own, so they planned to sell their rings that they had been given to family members but lost the rings. And so we go through stories of the adventures of the young girls through everyday life. It's really a kind of slice of life, and the story's been compared to like Little House on the Prairie, and being that kind of regional story of young girls growing up. There are some who have speculated that the character of Johnny Parks is based on Letcher Stark, but others feel that it's based on a young boy named Johnny Hart, and his home was, as described, was at the end of Green Avenue before there was a bridge in across Adams Bayou. Green Avenue ended before the bayou, and that correlates with how the home of this fictional character is described. The illustrations were done by a young woman named Janice Holland. She was a Washington, D.C. native and lifelong inhabitant. She went to the Corcoran School for her artistic training, and she illustrated many children's books and wrote a few of her own, and was well known in the Washington, D.C. area for going to book fairs and helping to introduce children to books. Unfortunately, her original illustrations for Rings on Her Fingers are lost. That's in contrast to Barbara Latham, where we have the beautiful original illustrations themselves. It's likely that the publisher retained the original drawings, and over the years they could be in archives, or they could be completely lost, having been sent out. It would be wonderful to find the original works, because Janice Holland did a beautiful job of capturing feeling about the region of Southeast Texas, although we have no reason to know or no reason to suspect she ever came here, and how much information she got from Janette Sebring Lowrey, we don't know. But she did have drawings that included the one like the illustration on the right, which was a scene where the young girls took a ride into the bayou land and went out to a site, and you see the beautiful cypresses and the Spanish moss hanging down, and really get a feeling for the region. They possibly corresponded because an address book of Janice Holland's survives, and she had an entry there for Mr. and Mrs. Fred Lowrey with their address in San Antonio, so she did correspond. It's likely she sent Christmas cards because there's a notation, no cards, so I think that Janette Sebring Lowrey didn't return Christmas cards, so she may have discontinued the correspondence. But Janette Sebring Lowrey's breakthrough publication was The Poky Little Puppy. This book was one of the one of the first 12 books of the Little Golden Books, and possibly from connections from publishers of the others, she was invited to write a story for the Little Golden Book. This was a publishing innovation in that it was a series of books that were intended to be inexpensive for families to buy, to be presented in this identifiable format where families would recognize it and become familiar and enjoy the publications, and have the financial resources to buy more because they were inexpensive, starting at like a quarter in those days, and they would be sold not in bookstores, but in markets that would be more accessible, like supermarkets. Janette Sebring Lowrey was assigned the illustrator Gustav Tengren, and one of his original illustrations for the cover of The Poky Little Puppy is on the right. The book that I'm showing on the left is not a first edition, it's a later edition, and as a later edition we see the author and the illustrator as names on the cover. That was not the case when the books were originally published. The names of the author and illustrator were not on the covers, and that's one of the reasons I think that they're not as well known by name. They were identified on the interior, but the series was what was important for the publication. The story was a delightful story of a curious little puppy who had 4 puppy siblings, and he would always be separated from them. And I think that's one of the reasons the story is appealing, because this little puppy is a little bit different from his other compatriots, and he's too curious. He's always being late because he stops literally to smell the roses. This is a double-page spread illustration, original by Gustav Tengren for The Poky Little Puppy. Gustav Tengren was a preeminent illustrator at the time. He came over from Sweden, where he had had a successful career, but he's one of the artists fleeing the conditions in Europe around the war period. And he was a very dapper man, a little bit of a ladies' man. He had success doing illustrations for advertisements and books. And then he was hired as an artist for Walt Disney. And Gustav Tengren was part of the groundbreaking group of artists who brought forward Walt Disney's visions of animated films, full length and for children, but also visually enjoyable to all. Gustav Tengren did many of the concept drawings for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the groundbreaking animated film that Walt Disney brought out. And we have in the special exhibition Childhood Classics, which is currently on view in the Stark Museum of Art, one of his pencil drawings for the Snow White ideas. But Tingren broke off from Walt Disney and resumed his illustration career, and that's how he became involved with the Pokey Little Puppy. And he eventually gained enough name that he would do illustrated golden books that were named after him. So it would be Tingren's Fairy Tales. I said that Janette Sebring Lowrey's Pokey Little Puppy was one of the original illustrations for the original, or she wrote the book for the original series of the 12 Little Golden Books. But what's less well known is that she wrote a second book for that original grouping of 12 books. She wrote something called Baby's Book, and it was illustrated by an artist named Bob Smith. Janette Sebring Lowrey's name is never on the book, either on the title page or on the cover or anything. And basically, it was printed without an identified author. But later scholars have verified that she was the author. And it's a very simple story. It's a story about a small baby who the narrator says, "Where is Tommy?" and goes through all the objects that belong to Tommy. And I was very excited to find that one of the illustrations was an orange. And I wondered if that was Janette Sebring Lowrey's identification with the town of Orange. But there were also illustrations of an apple and a banana, so it just may have been a coincidence. She also was associated with another little golden book, my first picture book, my first book of Bible stories. That book has a named author, Marianne Walton, but it seems to be a pseudonym, a pen name for Janette Sebring Lowrey. And this, I don't know why she would have assumed a pen name at this point, but perhaps it was to spread around the author's identities. And this is a retelling of several Bible stories, such as the story of David and Goliath and Joseph and his many-colored coat, and as on the case here, Moses. Gustav Tingren was an immigrant from Sweden, and another immigrant from Hungary, Tibor Gergely, was a prominent illustrator for the Little Golden Books. And Janette Sebring Lowrey wrote the book for his A Day in the Jungle. And you can see the delightful cartoon character animals that are featured in the story of A Day in the Jungle. So in the first 20 books of the Little Golden Books, Janette Sebring Lowrey had 4 of those, 2 anonymous and 2 under her name. And thus she makes a really important contribution to the history of Little Golden Books, but that will resume later. She went on to write The Bird, which was illustrated by a Guatemalan artist, Carlos Merida, who would go on to be a surrealist painter and have a significant career. Her next most famous book to the Pokey Little Puppy is Margaret, and this was a book written for more the teen age. It's a story of a young girl who moves from a really small town to another town, and she has to fit in with the in crowd at high school. It's set in the early 20th century, around 1909, but it's a story that remained in print into the 1960s and was kind of updated with, it never had illustrations throughout the book, but at least on the cover. The original first edition had an illustration by Robert Frankenberg, and you can see it sets it back in that very early 20th century. One of the reasons that Margaret became more famous is because Walt Disney optioned it as the basis for a television series that he did, but he changed the name to Annette because he featured the young actress Annette Funicello in the role of Margaret. And on the right you see a screenshot from that TV series, and became the story became well known to young audiences that way. Janette Sebring and Gustav Tingren would come together again in the 1960s to do a sequel to The Pokey Little Puppy, Where is the Pokey Little Puppy? And it follows a similar kind of story featuring the pokey little puppy, this time with his favorite rubber boot, which he lost, and then his siblings helped him find. So it's a story of cooperation. Her final book was Six Silver Spoons, which was a kind of a historical fictional novel about the Revolutionary War. Janette Sebring Lowrey was proud to be a daughter of the American Revolution, and so she wrote a story that wove a fictional story into real events around around Paul Revere. He made the Six Silver Spoons in the title of the story. And another prominent children's book illustrator, Robert Quackenbush, did the illustrations in the book with the historical theme, but in very modern color scheme. Janette Sebring Lowrey won a number of awards in her lifetime, but she said in a San Antonio newspaper that she was proudest of the fact that she was invited to do a reading at the Miriam Lutcher Stark Library at the University of Texas. She gave that reading in 1946, which is, of course, the time that her son was at the university, so that may have been one reason that she was proud to be there. But also it was another connection with Orange, with the library at the University of Texas that named after Miriam Lutcher Stark, who had been in the Ladies Shakespeare Club with her mother and her aunt. So I think it's another example of how important Orange was, that it was a site that she had adventures as a young girl that nurtured her enjoyment in growing up, even with a disciplinarian father, and that encouraged her literary longings through the library of her father and through the atmosphere, I'm sure, that was encouraged in the family to read and to play and enjoy narratives. And we're all fortunate. She wrote eventually 16 books. Most of them are out of print, but certainly The Little Puppy and Where is the Pokey Little Puppy continue to remain in print, and others can be found in rare book and used book sellers. And I invite you to delve into the literature of Janette Sebring Lowrey. She passed away in 1986, but left us a legacy of her delightful books. Thank you for coming today.